This podcast is not intended to provide any investment advice. The opinions expressed here by either the hosts or guests do not necessarily reflect the views of PSA, Collectors Holdings, or any of their affiliates. Any discussion of collectible values in the past or present is not a guarantee of future performance.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Index here on the PSA Pod. I'm Ryan Greene. With me today, Card Ladder's Chris McGill. The Index explores the hobby from the vantage point of price data and market trends provided by Card Ladder, but with a twist. Each month, we zero in on a trending athlete or card whose data supports an interesting story that's relevant to you, the collector. Today, we're going to be diving in on the man who has stolen the show so far in the 2024 NBA postseason, the Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards. One of the darlings of the recent hobby boom period for basketball collectors, he's realizing his immense potential on the game's biggest stage this spring. The play on both ends, the trash talk, the sound bites, the viral moments, he's been the entire package this postseason. So if we're exploring the collectability of one NBA star so far this postseason, he's truly the only logical starting point, Chris. And before we get into it, I just want to say welcome back to all of our listeners. We apologize for the brief hiatus on the show. We've been doing some moving around of spaces here at PSA HQ in Southern California. We're in a brand new podcast recording space. It's beautiful. The soundproofing is great. And Chris, I couldn't think of a buzzier episode to bring the PSA pod back with because, this guy's been it all for the last month.
It is great to be back, and I can't wait to do this episode. And what a postseason in the NBA when it comes to young superstars emerging. I don't think we could get a better landscape for that than the one we currently have right now, Ryan.
So I got to start by asking, you're a Jokic guy. He just put the dagger through your heart.
Yeah.
Are you okay after that series? I was shocked with, and we'll preface this by saying we're recording this very early in the Western Conference Finals. The T-Wolves are still riding very high off of, what a statement win. Dethroning the champs on visiting floor, coming back from down 20. As a Jokic guy, how was that to watch?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. The Nuggets were a tough watch for all of the postseason. And I think the Nuggets owe the Lakers an apology because they really stole several games from the Lakers with just miraculous buzzer-beating, game-winning shots from Jamal Murray. And they just caught a lot of nice breaks in the first round that I think made that series look way more lopsided than it was. Anthony Davis and LeBron James were so good in the playoffs this year, and I really think that series could have gone the other way. And then in Game 4 of that series, Jamal Murray tweaked his calf muscle. He did not look right in the Nuggets series, except for Games 3 and Game 7. And there was a multiple-day break in between both of those games, so I think that kind of explains why he looked a little bit better in those two. I don't think the Nuggets were going to be able to do it this year either way. I think the Lakers deserved a shot to play the Timberwolves. I think they may have actually been the better team given sort of the injury stuff and just how the Nuggets were so run down. They were a tough watch in this postseason.
Yeah, and I gotta say, Anthony Edwards, for all the moments where you keep saying, yeah, he's arrived this postseason, the one that just stands out to me was the whole story of after Game 6 when they won in Minnesota, him bringing up the story of telling the locker room attendant in Denver, I'll be back for Game 7. You'll see me for Game 7. And this is where I want to get into to start with all of this because it's been one of the more absurd things brought up in this whole surge period for Anthony Edwards, but fair or not, Edwards, as he's exploded this postseason, you keep hearing the name Michael Jordan brought up. And ever since Michael Jordan's retired, everybody wants to talk about the next Michael Jordan. Um, Obviously, LeBron's dealt with that conversation for 20 years of his NBA career. Not only because of Edwards' game and postseason production, but that like nasty competitive fire and swagger he's showing that was so signature with Jordan, I think is leading to some of those comparisons. Like people love seeing that like dog alpha male, um, who also has the just upper echelon talent. So just on an eye test level, but also within the metrics that you can see, is this like at just age 22, is it even fair to bring up Jordan's name when talking about what Anthony Edwards is doing right now?
Yeah, well, as much as I am a Jokic guy, I'm even more of a Michael Jordan guy. So that's going to color my opinion on this. I mean, how could it not? There have been many next Michael Jordans. There was Harold Miner, who is infamously memorialized on the 1993-94 ultra famous nicknames insert with the nickname Baby Jordan. And he never became Toddler Jordan. But there are others who wore that comparison very well, namely Kobe Bryant. So sometimes the comparison historically has worked, and sometimes, most of the time, it really hasn't. And like you say, I mean, Anthony Edwards is only 4 years into his NBA career. He's only 22 years old. He's had a lot of interesting experiences, including FIBA last year, and representing Team USA. So, he's obviously thought of highly by the league and by coaches and by his contemporaries. But then he exploded in these playoffs. And for those who paid attention in the playoffs last year, this wasn't a big surprise because Edwards' metrics in the playoffs last year were phenomenal. And then again this year, through his first 7 games, once again, he was among the very best players, regardless of which catch-all metric you want to look at. And so he already was in the mold of those great shooting guard, perimeter player, playoff risers, including Jamal Murray, who we just talked about. He's one of the great playoff risers. Donovan Mitchell was a player who was in a very similar situation to Anthony Edwards when Mitchell had his 57-point playoff game back in the 2020 playoffs, playing in a similar system, playing with Rudy Gobert as the defensive anchor, except that time as Utah Jazz. So we have some modern precedent for these playoff risers who put up really solid regular seasons but then become extraordinary in the playoffs. And I think Edwards is perfectly appropriate to compare to a Donovan Mitchell or to compare to a Jamal Murray, somebody who's a proven playoff riser. But when you get to Michael Jordan, you can't just do it in the playoffs. You have to do it in the playoffs because Michael Jordan did it in the playoffs, but you have to do it in the regular season too. And so I'll give one stat and then I'll get off the soapbox. But in Michael Jordan's second season, he had a broken foot, so he only played 17 games. That was his age 22 season, but we can't really look at such a small sample. But in Michael Jordan's age 23 season, which was the 86-87 season, Michael Jordan finished second in MVP voting. He led the league in box plus minus, which is a good catch-all statistic that ranks all players. He was first in the league. He was the best player in the league per that metric. Now this year, Anthony Edwards made second team All-NBA, which is extremely impressive for a 22-year-old player, but he wasn't second in MVP voting. And in the box plus minus metric that Michael Jordan led the league in during his age 23 season, Anthony Edwards is 32nd in the league in the regular season in box plus minus. So that's the next shoe to drop for Anthony Edwards for me to really earn a Michael Jordan comparison is I need to see a full season of MVP level play at this young age, and then I'll be more welcoming, more receptive to the idea, Ryan.
Okay, so beyond that, let's switch to the hobby side of things, Chris. I'm honestly, how great has this breakout been for the hobby in general? Because there was this perfect storm of a wave of incoming young talent from 2019 to 21, when the hobby at the same time and the profiles of these players just went sky high, with everything booming. Seeing one of those guys though from that wave where you had like Ja Morant and Zion and LaMelo Ball, who have kind of all had their ups and downs, seeing one of these guys really peak and reach the potential in this manner, this has to be seen as a healthy moment for the hobby in many ways, I would think.
Yeah, I think so. And it's so interesting that we had Zion Williamson, the number 1 overall pick in 2019. Ja Morant, I think, was the number 3 overall pick in that class. And both of those guys were heavily prospected upon by the hobby. And then just sort of sneaking in the draft class right behind them in 2020 was Anthony Edwards. And he was the first overall pick, even though this draft class had LaMelo, who was incredible right out the gate. And when he's healthy, he still is a talent with a very high ceiling. There was James Wiseman. Even though Edwards was the number 1 overall pick, and even though prices for him immediately were very high, I mean, he had a card sell, his flawless Logo Man autograph from his rookie year sold for almost $500,000 during the early days. But this was also when the market was really high. And it just, he never had the hype that Zion had. He never had the hype that Ja Morant had. But he showed from his second year on that he was a force when the stakes were the highest, and that he was just an incredible competitor who was going to show up in the biggest moments on the biggest stage. And he showed that again in his second year in the playoffs, and now in his third year in the playoffs, he's in the Western Conference Finals. And he is being celebrated worldwide by basketball fans as a player to be excited about. And the hobby loves that. The hobby is worldwide. The hobby responds positively to stars who can conjure up notions of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and stars who are young and just so full of potential that everybody can see because of the beauty of their game. And, this applies to the Vince Carters of the world, who are just spectacular athletes and consummate professionals and who never quite, get to the MVP tier or the championship tier, but have incredible multi-all-star appearance careers. Players like that are beloved around the world as well, and they have great brands that still endure and still do well in the hobby to this day. And Edwards is just, it's a real hobby success story, because once in a while, it's good when a prospected player, a number 1 overall pick, pans out. It's a really good thing when that happens. Now, we're only in the 4th season for Anthony Edwards. There's still a ton of the story to be written. Everything is still very much potential energy, not fully realized yet. But this is as close to panning out as we've gotten since the 2019 draft. And I think that's something to be pretty excited about.
Really well said. It's and we want to dive in deeper on the hobby side of this. And Chris, the best way we know how to do that is with data. So as we get into talking about the cards and really getting a little more granular on the hobby side, let's start with the data. So right now, Card Ladder tracks 215 cards of Anthony Edwards, and his player index has seen a crazy recent spike. So since October 1, 2023, which we'll approximately call at the beginning of the season, his overall index has grown by 75.6%. And it's seen a 69.5% growth since just April 1, right as you got into kind of the playoff season and then his postseason breakout. Now, on the PSA side of things, Edwards is starting to crack some of that rarefied air among top names among PSA submitters. So when you look at the 10 most graded basketball athletes since the beginning of the NBA season, that October 1 benchmark we were talking about, not shocking that Wemby is number 1, right? 2 through 4, Jordan, Kobe, LeBron. So like the Mount Rushmore of modern basketball, right?
Of course.
Number 5, Anthony Edwards.
Yeah. Number 6 is really interesting too, by the way, Ryan.
Number 6, Caitlin Clark.
That's cool.
You are really seeing that. I mean, that is the full spectrum of star power, right? But I mean, I think the same can be said for Caitlin Clark. I think these two have reached that level, and I think they're probably going to be mainstays of that top 10 really over any time period you look at in any slice you look at going forward. But I want to get a little deeper with you, Chris, and talk about specific cards that you're seeing with card ladder data, key cards especially that have really, I guess, been the poster boys for that growth spike we've seen with the Ant-Man.
Absolutely. So I picked out 3 for us to talk about, and the first one I picked out is an obvious card, I think, that's usually a pretty good leading indicator for a player's market, especially a young player, and that's the rookie year Prism Silver. And in a grade of PSA 10, since the turn of the new year, that card has appreciated 162%. So around the turn of the new year, this card was selling for about $500. It actually very briefly flirted with $1,800, and today it's settled in at about the $1,400 range. That's a very dynamic uptick in value, especially for a card that already has 1,700 PSA 10 examples in circulation. For a card that's that dense, that's that available, to see a return of 2.5, 2.6x in a very short window of time is telling us that the demand for Anthony Edwards cards is just through the roof. What do you think about his Prism Silver and the price growth that it's seen?
I mean, it's really interesting because in our last episode of the Index, we talked about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and his Silver Prism and, using that as a benchmark. And obviously, you've seen production of the Silver Prism parallels rise over the years. But, I mean, I still, I know we've talked about this with Jack as well on this show previously. Like, I still look at, in ultra modern basketball, I look at the Silver Prism rookie card as like the baseline, right? The starting point when having these conversations. But I also think they see a lot more fluctuation. So I guess I'm not surprised to see it having this kind of spike. But I'm one of those people that I think even with the availability of it in like, especially in a top PSA grade, I still think it just, I'm impressed the way they hold value. And I think it's been really cool to see, especially because on top of it all, he has a really cool looking Silver Prism first rookie.
Do you like the pose, the behind the back pass?
The pass behind the back, like the black background. Like I think when you compare that to the LaMelo Ball, like oddly enough, being the only one of the top rookies without the black background, where it's a game shot of, I think it's like Alex Len just like clumsily chasing after him. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I love it when they do the cropped photo shoot shot for the Prism base rookie. It's just, that's become what I'm accustomed to. And yeah, it's a good looking card. I do wish there was a different pose. I mean, look, everybody nitpicks every Prism rookie. Like the Wembanyama has just, it's been nitpicked to death with the curtain and everything. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It's the flagship. But all right, I have another card here for you as well. One that is up 156% since the turn of the year. Except unlike the Prism Silver, this one only has 50 PSA 10 copies. And it's the 2020 Crown Royale Kaboom PSA 10. And this card last sold yesterday for $12,100. So that is a monster price for a Kaboom, but Ryan, I'm sure you can speak to this as well. The Kaboom is just the most cherished, coveted, desired insert of the Panini era.
Yeah, I think I talked about the baseline with flagship rookie cards being the Silver Prism. Personally, I'm not a big Kaboom guy. I've mentioned that before on the show, but I do respect that when it comes to the high end insert, this is where you start. So, not surprising to see this level of movement on it.
Yeah, there's 132 or I'm sorry, there's 107 graded by PSA. I mean, it's not like it's numbered to 10 here, 12,000 for a Pop 50 PSA 10 is just a staggering price.
Yeah. Now let's look at another signature rookie card. We talk about the key flagship rookie card, the key insert. Then we got to look at the key RPA.
We do. And we're looking at the PSA 9 of this card. It's the National Treasures RPA out of 99, the true, the base. And the PSA 9 is a population 9, so not a ton of those in PSA slabs. PSA is graded 43, and the grading runs the gamut. There's 12 authentics, there's a 5, there's a 6, there's 8 PSA 7s, 9 PSA 8s, and just 2 PSA 10s. So, but before I say anything about the PSA 10, let's talk about the PSA 9 because this one actually has some sales data. The PSA 9 sold about 2.5 weeks ago for $50,000, and the Card Ladder estimate puts the value of that card today, based on the growth of his index, at about $60,000. So this card has sold 7 times in any of the PSA 9 slabs. We have 7 total sales, and $50,000 is a huge price. It's up 68% since the turn of the year. I mean, this card last year, you could have got it for 18 grand in March of 2023. Now it's a $60,000 card. Just a massive 3x return in the high end for this NT, Ryan. And oh, by the way, that PSA 10, if you have one of those too, that's probably $150,000 to $200,000 card.
Yeah, I got one of them on my desk, of course. So the movement here is staggering, right? And again, we'll mention, given the high baseline of prices for Anthony Edwards cards, considering when his rookie cards were released in kind of the timeline of the history of the hobby, I think it's really impressive. And I think it's a really healthy moment for the hobby. Now let's spin this a little bit. Overall collectability. We love talking about this on the index. We have a couple different barriers we look at here. But there's really 2 I want to focus on because we typically talk about age and position profile. Look, he's a do-it-all lead guard, scoring guard, plays great on both ends. He's only 22. Like we can draw the conclusions there. Like he's fantastic. But I want to start by talking about the franchise and the team situation, right? Obviously, their franchises and their current roster and team is positioned like really nicely to not just make a run this year, be pretty good for the next few, at least. Do you think it adds a little bit more, I guess you could say, likability when it's a guy who's carrying a franchise that's been just like so down on its luck for so long, and he's kind of leading the charge to resurrect it, right? Versus say a young star coming, sorry, Drew, to the Lakers. Like, you know what I mean? I think, do you think that adds a little bit more of an opening for people really wanting to rally behind that player and that team? Thus, in the hobby, really making them a little more widely collectible?
Yes. Yep, there is an every man, every woman dimension to playing for a flyover country staple team that is relatable. It's admirable. I don't want to put us in a position where no matter what situation it is, it benefits the player. Like, I think it is indisputable that going to the New York market or the LA market is going to open you up just to a larger volume of collectors than playing in Minneapolis or, Indiana type of, New Orleans type of market is going to open you up to. But the flip side to that coin is definitely what you just laid out, which is that there's something a little more relatable to it, and there's an underdog element to it that is easy to root for. And then something else that has to be mentioned with respect to the Minnesota Timberwolves is that a handful of some of the coolest NBA players have played for that franchise. And one in particular that sticks out is Kevin Garnett, who's one of the very few, I think, who had a great career, an underrated career, if you sort of go back and take a look at some of his metrics, and who still has maintained a consistent, cool factor to his brand, even as he transitioned into the podcasting lane. A lot of players kind of get a little stuffy, a little cartoonish when they go into, podcast, TV, talking head mode. And that didn't happen to him. He's still, I think, seen as a cool, rebellious character, just like he was when he was on the floor. So I think taking the baton from Kevin Garnett in that Minnesota Timberwolves uniform is helping a little bit too.
I agree. I think I think the only thing that makes it cooler is if this isn't just a flash in the pan. There's some staying power behind it, right? I think they're set up nicely for it. And as we start to bring this down the home stretch, we're going to talk a little bit more about those advanced years of Edwards' career. We're gonna start by talking about a lot of people are probably getting into Anthony Edwards cards right now. There's so many places to look, right? From the low end to the mid end to the high end. Chris, I wanna talk to you about some cards that stand out to you in terms of hobby significance around Anthony Edwards that are out on the market. Some may be readily available, some not, but I think it's good to learn these things about the products and about what's out there, no matter what level you're looking at. So let's start with, a little bit of a more accessible, let's start with a rookie card that's
Sure.
a little more accessible for him, that has some really good staying power and maybe is a little bit underappreciated.
Yeah, and I love this segment. And right before I get into the card, the process that I go through to identify these cards might be of interest, because I'm not an expert in Anthony Edwards rookie cards or anything about the 2020 class of rookie cards. So how do you start? How did I go and learn about these? And I just do it two different ways. I go to Trading Card DB, which is a checklist website, and they have a page that displays all of the NBA licensed releases for the 2020-2021 NBA season, and there were 30. So I look at that and I see, okay, here's all the different products that got released. That's going to help me set the parameters. And then I go to Card Ladder sales history and I just type in Anthony Edwards, and I put some parameters on that. I say, if I'm trying to find a low end card, I'll put the parameters to give me all the sales, in the last 30 days that were under $500, or the last 3 months, or just in general, all the sales under $500. And I'll just do it that way. And I'll already have in mind the brands and the products that were released this year, and then I can just start kind of eyeballing different results. And if I find an interesting card, I'll go over to the checklist and see where it sits in the checklist and go from there. So the first card that I have here is the 2020 Mosaic number 201 Anthony Edwards. the blue parallel out of 99 in a grade of PSA 9. This is a limited card. There's only 99 copies. Card number 201 is the true rookie card for Edwards in Mosaic. It's meaning that it's the first appearing Anthony Edwards card in the base set. And it can get confusing because he has 3. He has this card, number 201, then he also has card number 252, which is a subset called National Pride. And then he has a card number 261, which is a subset called NBA Debut. So it's important not to get those confused. They're all fine cards, but I personally am partial to the first appearing because I can call that the true rookie. So card number 201, the blue parallel out of 99, which isn't, to my eye, it's a nice looking color match. And in a PSA 9, its value today is about $400. And it's a Pop 27. 45 total have been graded by PSA. I just think that's a pretty sweet deal, Ryan. $400, one of the more premium Optichrome products. Cool looking action shot on the card of him like soaring in for a dunk. 99 copies. I mean, there's a lot to like there. What do you think about that card?
I think of all the modern Mosaic releases, I think 2020 was the best looking design. I think you compare that with, blue prisms, blue parallels typically pop anyway, but the color match is really nice. And I think this is the best action shot on any of Ant-Man's flagship rookie cards. It's a game photo, I believe, of him soaring through the air, cocking back to dunk. This is eye appeal wise. This card is crazy. I've had some Mosaic in my collection, and I will say this, they always look good in hand, especially the colored parallels.
Yeah, I love it. It's the black finite and prism, the finish that is overlaid on top of that card. It's the same finish that's overlaid on top of this Mosaic card. I love that pattern. So cool. I'm glad. I really like that, the noting that it's one of the better, if not the best, action shots on one of his rookie cards. I mean, I just think that when I saw that price when I was researching this, I was like, you know what? I might need to go buy one of these, which I've never said before during one of these segments, but I was just like, this is only $400. So, but all right, the next card I have is a more of a mid-tier price range. It's a curveball, so just hang with me here on this. It's the 2020 Panini Black, card number 77 of Anthony Edwards. He only has one base card in the base set, and this is it. And the card that I'm referring to is the Platinum 1/1 Parallel in the grade of PSA 8. This card is actually sold 3 different times in the last few years. The most recent sale puts it at about a value of $2,000 today. So the Platinum 1/1 is the only 1/1 of this card, which I think is really cool. I really like when there's only one 1/1, a 1 of 1/1, if you will. And 2020 Panini Black is the second year of Panini Black as a standalone product. And it's continued. It came out in 19, then it had 2020, then it had 21, then it had 22. And we'll see if they make it for Wembanyama's year. I'm guessing they will. But yeah, there's been 4 consecutive years of this product. And my final and the most important aspect of this card, the reason why it really stood out to me, aside from I think it looks like it pops in hand. The design looks like it's just got this beautiful, like, rainbow foil to it. But the reason why I really like this card is because, as I mentioned earlier, when you go to Trading Card DB, you'll see that there's only 30 fully licensed NBA products produced by Panini during Ant's rookie season. So there can only be 30 true rookie cards for Ant. There can only be 30 first appearing Anthony Edwards base cards from his rookie season. And this is the only 1/1 parallel to one of them. I think that's a really special story that this card has, that I can tell about this card. If somebody's wanted to see my Anthony Edwards collection, they say, oh, what's this? Why do you have this? And I would say, well, here's why this card is special. And I'd say what I just said. So I think it looks cool. I think that the price is terrific at $2,000. What do you think about this card?
I love it. Do you think that, I'm curious what that price would be if it sold today?
I mean, look, when was the last? I think this card sold like just a few weeks ago, maybe. Let me see here. This card sold, yeah, May 13th. For $1,700.
That's wild.
I'm upset that I missed this.
There's it really shows too that there's, even as his prices are climbing, there's some finds out there.
Yes, there is. That's the lane right there, Ryan. This is the lane. Digging through checklists and picking out hidden gems like that.
Now, let's go for like pie in the sky, right?
Yeah.
The you can write a check of any size. Obviously the clear route to go is like, I'm going to go get the 2020 Prism, Black Prism or the Nebula Choice. Now, let's an incredible card with an incredible story. If money's no object here, where are you looking?
Well, just you made me think about something. Didn't PSA just grade one of his big Prism rookies?
The Nebula Choice 1 of 1 was just here a couple weeks ago.
I thought I saw that on social media. Yeah, that's such a cool card. Okay. So the one that I picked out for the pie in the sky option here is the 2022 National Treasures Logo Man Autograph 1 of 1 of Anthony Edwards, which sold on eBay about 2 months ago. And this is a third-year card, and I am a pretty strict adherent to narrowing my scope to looking at rookie cards or rookie year cards. And this isn't a rookie year card, but here's what's special about this card. At the time, I think it sold for like 40 grand or 45 grand. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. 42,000. It sold for $42,500 on March 5th. All right, so about 2.5 months ago. Card ladder value today is about 70 grand. Now, here's what's interesting about the story for this card. My research, which granted I spent about 5 minutes researching this, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate. I'm pretty sure I scoured the checklist properly. I believe this is Anthony Edwards' first game-used National Treasures Logo Man autograph card. His first from NT, which is pretty neat. And it's also his only Logo Man autograph from his third year of National Treasures, and he doesn't have a Logo Man autograph in the second year of National Treasures. So the value of this card today is about 70 grand. If my research is correct, that this is his first NT Logo Man autograph 1 of 1, I kind of like this more than I like the NT RPA out of 99 in a similar price range. Which way do you lean on that?
I agree. I think when it comes to cards of this caliber, I'm like you. I'm primarily a rookie card collector, but when it comes to cards of this caliber, when it has the kind of the story like that behind it, a game used Logo Man and it's the first one, yeah, that I can move my rookie year preference off to the side, especially when writing a blank check.
Yeah, that's nice. When you have the money tree.
Okay, Chris. So speaking of non-rookie year cards, we're going to bring it home on this. Regardless of how this all plays out, right? Like I said earlier at the top of the show, we're recording this early in the Western Conference Finals. Anything can happen. Anything may have happened by the time this goes live. Regardless of how this season ends, where do you think, as we're talking about non-rookie year cards, so let's start talking about, say, 2024 products when those start rolling out next year, right? You get 2024 Panini Prism. He's got his high end, that would be at that point his 5th year gold Prism card. Very desirable. And we know how prices for cards of key veterans can kind of go a little, get more and more accessible the farther you go in the career. Unless you're LeBron James, right? What kind of tier do you think Anthony Edwards is in when 2024 products start coming out versus when this season began, when we're talking about his, later year, veteran year cards, both in value and also like the excitement of pulling it, right? Like I pull a big LeBron parallel in 2023, I'm still hyped. I pull a big, I don't know what the right comparison is, but you know, I'm a Dame Lillard guy, right? I pull a big Dame Lillard parallel now in his 10th, 11th season. Yeah, that's cool. Where in that scale do you think Ant-Man is now based on what he's done for himself and his profile, and his growth in the hobby so far with this postseason run?
Love this topic. It's a great thing to think about. He is very, very high in that hierarchy on that scale. But by virtue of his persona, his emergence as a favorite of the media, his performance in the playoffs in particular, he has added substantial value to every single box of basketball cards that will be manufactured over the foreseeable future. Every single box is more valuable, is going to be more expensive when we go to buy it because of the potential of getting a cool Anthony Edwards parallel or a cool Anthony Edwards veteran card out of it. That is the power that his brand brings to the hobby. And I'll give you a tangible example of how that's the case. So recently there was an auction, I believe it ended May 5th, so about two and a half weeks ago. There was an auction of his third year Prism Black in a PSA 10, and it sold for $30,000. His third year Prism Black. By comparison, recent Prism Black sales of Stephen Curry and LeBron James are in the 40,000-ish range. So he is like not quite in the Curry LeBron level. And by the way, that's not really apples to apples because Curry and LeBron have over 10 Prism Blacks, whereas Edwards only has a total of 4. But nonetheless, he is like just one tier below for a card like a Prism Black. He's just one tier below LeBron and Steph Curry. So that's the type of value, that's the type of punch that Anthony Edwards cards are packing, no pun intended, in these boxes and these packs that collectors across the world might be opening and trying to get an Anthony Edwards card. I mean, you can pull an Anthony Edwards vet card from something like a Prism pack or an Optic pack that can be worth 5 figures. That's where he's at right now.
He's in the upper tier.
Oh yeah.
Love it. Well, here's hoping this episode ages beautifully when he lifts the Larry O'Brien trophy at the end of the year, right?
But Ryan, okay, so I forgot to address that part of this. Even if he doesn't, even if he exits in the Western Conference Finals, he has done more than enough to keep people extremely excited about what his future and the future of the Minnesota Timberwolves is going to be. And there is every reason in the world for every fan base, myself, being a fan of multiple other teams that are competing against them in the West, we all have great reason to be fearful of the Minnesota Timberwolves for the foreseeable future, in no small part due to Ant-Man.
On a final note on that, I hope he stays in Minnesota for a long time. I like the superstar, one team, long tenure. I hope he's the next one in line. Well, Chris, this was fun. Welcome back. It was good to do this again. Thank you to Drew Sierra, our producer, as always. For Chris McGill, I'm Ryan Greene. This has been the Index on the PSA Pod. We'll be back again soon. Talk to you then.